Happy birthday, Karen! Welcome to the music room for September 23rd, 2015. Yes, it's Karen's birthday today, so we're celebrating all things Karen. This music room is for you. We started out with a bunch of photographs of Karen throughout her life. And that was the soundtrack for that was on Karen's CD, the one that she recorded many years ago, called It's a Boy, off of her CD called Gifts Uncovered. So in our family, Mom and Dad gave birth to 5 kids. There's Marcia, John, Jeannie, Karen, and myself. And so Karen's the little baby sister. And she's always been that to me. That's why this is entitled LBS, for little baby sister. Happy birthday, Karen. Well, Karen and I are 2 years apart, and Jeannie is 5 years older than us. So basically, Jeannie was a lot older, and so Karen and I basically grew up together. We played together. We moved from Pittsburgh to Los Alamos together. We explored Los Alamos, and from that, I have a lot of fond memories. And Karen is the closest to me of all my family members. So I'm putting together a bunch of stories about Karen and the music room here, and so we will go ahead and start. The song you're hearing now is called Moonlight Sonata by Beethoven, of course. And when all my sisters grew up learning to play piano, at some point, I think in Pittsburgh, we bought a baby grand piano, Yamaha. It was a beautiful brown piano. And when we moved to New Mexico, Karen was 8 years old. So a couple years later, she started learning how to play piano. And all my sisters learned how to play Moonlight Sonata. And in fact, I think I have a photograph of the piano in Los Alamos. Yeah, here it is. So here's a picture of Karen playing Yamaha with my dad and myself on looking. It looks like this is the living room in Los Alamos. All my sisters learned to play, and when Karen was learning, she practiced it over and over and over again. So it's burned in my memory. Whenever I hear the Moonlight Sonata, I think of Karen learning how to play it. I looked through my MP3s and I found a copy of Moonlight Sonata. That's the one you're hearing now. Oddly enough, it's recorded by Depeche Mode. So I guess the guys in Depeche Mode learned it to play when they were growing up as well. That, of course, is Karen and Bob, a.k.a. Bob Sandy Bob, from the Leisure Club days. But there was a picture of a house in that sequence. That was the Leisure Club on Jordan Street. Bob and I rented the Leisure Club by 1984. When we looked at it, it was a 3-bedroom house, so we talked Scotty Dane into moving in with us. So it was Scotty and Bob and I had rented the Leisure Club. Only after we moved in did we realize the Leisure Club was a 4-bedroom house. So there's a little tiny bedroom there. We call it the tiny room. And about that time, Karen had transferred from Fort Lewis College in Durango down to Las Cruces, and she was living in the dorms. She lived in the dorms a real short time, something like 3 weeks or something, and that wasn't going to work out. So we got a little bit of the deposit back from the campus, and she moved in with us. So Karen lived there at the Leisure Club as a founding member that until she moved up to Seattle. So the Leisure Club started out, the original four were Bob, Karen, Scott, and myself. And that fourth bedroom, Scott's room, made a lot of transitions. Chris lived there, Gary lived there, and there's other people lived in that fourth room, but basically Karen and Bob and I stayed the entire time we were there in Las Cruces at the Leisure Club. So those are photographs from that time. We don't have a lot of pictures of our days at the Leisure Club for some reason. In fact, that one picture of that car is not Karen's car, but it's a representation of Karen's car. She drove a blue Datsun B210 that was given to her by Cindy. So those are some of the photos. Now, this was 1984 through 1988, so that was the heyday of 80s new wave music. So I'm going to show you some albums I have here. It just turns out that the albums on the wall here in the music room, that this wall behind me it just worked out that these were all boxed together in my album box. So when I started laying out the layout of the room, all the new wave albums basically, or 80s albums, all ended up on this wall. So let's go through and look at a couple of these, and I'll tell you a couple stories. So these are a lot of the albums I have from the 80s. I'm reminded, to me, when I see these albums, they are equivalent to photographs for me. I remember the stories associated with the albums and the people involved. Like you saw an NXS album up there on the wall. Whenever I see that, I think, oh, NXS, Johnny Totten likes NXS, and he's married to Karen. And, there's Pretty in Pink. I'm reminded of a story about Chris, which we will talk a little bit later about. That's a whole episode there. That one in the corner is actually a 70s album. That's Golden Earring. That is going to be another episode as well, that Golden Earring. So if we go down here, we got there's Howard Jones. When I looked up this Howard Jones album, I don't even remember any of the songs off of it, but I put it on the wall because it reminds me of Karen. So it's an equivalent photograph of Karen. I know that sounds weird, but to me it's perfectly logical. And we keep going down. Here's these ones I used to some filler albums. Definitely Willie Nelson is not from the 80s. There's Unforgettable Fire. And then over here, there's Gary Wright. Everyone knows Gary Wright. And at the bottom, there's 3 albums down here that are definitely Karen's albums. Elton John, she loved to play that Levon song. There's Depeche Mode album, and then, oh my, right here in the corner, Tears for Fears, The Hurting. So like I was saying, these album covers to me are equivalent to being like photographs. So they remind me of people and events of my life. And that's the reason why I started this series called The Music Room, so I could capture those stories. I was talking to Karen about this. I said, do you have stories you want to record? And she says, I really don't have that connection like you do to music and events and people. The only ones that really come to mind are, that Tears for Fears song. And I said, this song here, this one's called Ideas for Opiates. This album, this is from the Tears for Fears 1983 release called The Hurting. And this was one of the soundtracks of the Leisure Club. Chris would play this a lot, and Chris's bedroom and Karen's bedroom shared a common wall. So when Chris would play this, Karen would be in there on the phone, and she would thump, da-da-da-dum, thump, 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 da-da-da-dum, thump, thump, thump. So whenever she hears this song, Ideas for Opiates, she's definitely reminded of living at the Leisure Club. But the next story is one of mine of Karen there at the Leisure Club, but I need to get set up for it, so I'll be right back. So we lived at the Leisure Club from 1984 to 1988. There was one phone line with basically three guys and Karen. At the time, there was a small window there where Karen was doing a long distance relationship when it was on the phone a lot. A good evening, a short evening for her would be 20 minutes. A marathon evening would be 2 hours. So part of living at the Leisure Club was teasing the other members inseparably. So one night after one of these marathon sessions, Bob and I, or Scott or Chris, I don't remember who the third party was, but we sat out and we worked out a little song for Karen in the living room. When she came out from her phone call, we whipped this out. So I got out the old Les Paul and I got it tuned up. And so let's see if we can remember how this goes. Phone queen, you make my phone ring. You make everything ring. Groovy. I think she just cracked up laughing. Because we were teasing her, and we had a good time at that.
And she was lying in the grass, and she could hear the highway breathing, and she could see a nearby factory. She's making sure she is not dreaming.
When I was panning around, I forgot to show you one album. It's tucked way back in here behind this speaker. Little Creatures by the Talking Heads. When Karen got married, she was the first member of the Leisure Club to actually get married. We all went up to Seattle, and we drove a little further north to Mukilteo, where it was kind of like a Leisure Club reunion. Everybody was there. You saw a photograph of all the crew there playing basketball out in front of Karen's house. There's a lot of stories about that wedding, but that's not what we're talking about here. The song that's playing now is called And She Was. When at Karen's reception for her wedding, we did I came up with this silly idea called the Leisure Dance. So I got the guys together and I said, all right, let's, after John and Karen have their first dance, let's get Karen out there alone and we'll dance around her and have the Leisure Dance. And so we went out there and we just kind of improvised this crazy dance where we all just circled around her and she was in the center. And the finale of that dance was we picked her up and put her above our heads. I remember looking out at all the people at the reception, all little old ladies. They're going to drop her. Well, we weren't going to drop her. This is Karen, man. So the tradition continued for all the other weddings. Chris met Kathy at at Karen's wedding, and Bob met Pam at Kathy's wedding, and so all these weddings occurred because Karen got married to John in Mukilteo, Washington. Well, this side of the wall doesn't really have many memories for Karen. I was looking around. I carefully looked at all these albums. You know, here's Pink Floyd, Black Sabbath. There's the U2 album. Should be on the other side. But then I ran across this one, Slow Hand by Eric Clapton. Brings me to my last album here at the Music Room. This is Eric Clapton's Slow Hand. This was released in 1977. This is Eric Clapton's most famous album. It's got Cocaine, Lay Down Sally, Wonderful Tonight on it, and this one. I hate to say that this one's probably my friend Alistair's from high school. I probably borrowed it to record it, and I never gave it back. But when I see this on this wall over here. It reminds me of Karen, not for any of those songs, but for song number 1 on side 2 called The Core. Alistair had a PV electric guitar in high school, and he was learning how to play a lot of songs, and so he wanted to learn how to play the core, so he bought the sheet music for it, brought it over, and he was talking to my dad, about it, because my dad could play guitar and read sheet music, and so my dad gets out his old classical guitar that had acoustic strings on it, and he tries to figure out how to play it, and he can't really kind of play both parts naturally. So he gets Karen in there, who was in high school at the time, and she was playing a portion of the core on the piano. My dad was on the acoustic guitar, and Alistair was playing his electric guitar. And I ran the tape player, so I would basically hit stop and hit record, rewind, and then I'd hit play again. So the four of us, well, the three of them, tried to learn how to play the core. What they came up with didn't sound anything like the Eric Clapton's version, but they worked on this for about 45 minutes to an hour. So when I look at the wall over here, and I see Johnny Cash and Lynyrd Skynyrd and the Rolling Stones, and I see Eric Clapton, I think of the core and back to Alistair and Karen and my dad learning how to play that song. Happy birthday, Karen. This is Music Room for September 23rd, 2015. And all my sisters learned how to play Moonlight Sonata. And in fact, I think I have a photograph of the piano in Los Alamos. Yeah, here it is. So this is a photograph of Karen playing. So this is a photograph of Karen playing the piano. That's my dad there. So here's a photograph of Karen playing the piano. No. So here's a photograph of Karen playing the piano. So here's a photograph of Karen playing the Yamaha. That's my dad there. And this looks like a... Oh my God.